CEO Hub. I'm Paul Wheels. Great to have you here. We have a great speaker, Dolo Miah from Linebreak, joining us this evening. And of course, we've got the legendary John Staveley. John, how are you? How was your holiday?
Very good, yeah. So doing some walking around the Austrian and German Alps, the Bavarian Alps, and yeah, it's very nice. Good wild swimming and hiking up 1,000-meter mountains, and just generally relaxing.
So somebody who works in connectivity and IoT, you got well and truly away from connectivity and disconnected.
Well, actually at the top of this mountain there was a big pub that sold huge jugs of beer, so I'm not sure that it was that unconnected. And we saw some drones fly over doing deliveries while we were going up, but the walk was enjoyable.
Yeah. Dolo, you were away as well. How are you?
I'm great, Paul. Nice to see you again, and nice to see you as well, John. Yeah, it seems like a long time ago now, but yeah, I was in Malta for a while, so not been there before. Very hot, very nice, great history. So yeah, slightly disconnected, not as disconnected as John.
Yeah, there's actually some really good companies out in Malta as well. Nice little tax haven. So there's a lot of gambling companies and such like out there.
I wouldn't know about gambling, but yeah.
Yeah, I've had my days of that. Not these days. I spent a little bit of time out in Tenerife to disconnect and do some deep sea fishing last week, which was a nice time to have. Hey, Dolo, I really really appreciate you coming on the show this evening. It's been great to meet you over the past few months with the introduction from the National Edge AI Hub and the work that you guys are doing and starting to build out. And I think. I don't know if you've got a part of your presentation. I should ask just before we came online, but do you include a part of your story within your presentation about how you got to where you are with Linebreak and how you built the company? Or
I don't have a slide because I felt I didn't want to sort of just talk all about Linebreak, but I will definitely give a little overview about that.
Yeah, if you could do that, I think it's a fantastic story and give some great gravitas on your experience there, if you wouldn't mind.
Of course. So yeah, well, as I say, thanks, John, and thanks, Paul, for inviting me to the show. So my name's Dolo. I'm the CEO of Linebreak. Linebreak's a youngish company, but where Linebreak was formed was my background is essentially spending over 30 years in industry and over 25 years in consulting and systems integration. So I've worked with global consulting and systems integration companies, helping some of the largest businesses globally and in the UK with their technology-enabled business transformation. And in that time, I've seen, of course, quite a few different waves of technology and transformation, and we'll touch on what we see as the latest convergence of some of those things here. Back in my early days, when I came out of university with my computer science degree, back in the early 90s, I was an embedded software engineer, actually. So I spent a few years building SCADA systems, using microcontrollers, building real-time systems. Before we used to call those things IoT, that's what we call them now. Then spent, as I said, quite a lot of time across different sectors and industries and regions in consulting and technology transformation. And then after leaving my last role, which is a global role looking at technology trends for a large European consulting and systems integration company, me and my former boss, who is now we're partners in Linebreak, said, what's going to be our thesis? What are we going to help enterprises with in our next chapter? And what we saw was the need for enterprises to really address all of their data wherever it is, and that's really going to be the topic of what I want to go into today, to explain how that converges with the current wave of AI and agentic AI that we're seeing, what it means to be able to access your data and build your data out everywhere. And in a way, it's a kind of, for me, back to the future. This is definitely about embedded systems, data at the edge, and being able to act on that intelligently and immediately. Speed is of the essence. So so that's a little bit about me and where I've come from and what Linebreak's about, which is helping enterprises, as you see on this page here, helping enterprises to become real-time businesses. So let's get into it. If I can go to the next slide, I hope it works. There we go. So why do we think enterprises need to be real-time businesses? We are seeing that the next enterprise, it has to be a real-time business. Why? Because on the one hand, we're seeing huge macroeconomic and geopolitical shifts. This means, I mean, let's just look at what's happened over the last few years, right? We'll remember even as far back as let's say the 2008-9 financial crisis. We're still feeling the impact and ramification of that today. And then we fast forward a little bit, and we've of course seen what happened with COVID. That really highlighted the fragility of some of our supply chain, which was heavily disrupted. Also, we've seen the shock of tensions across the globe, which has created energy price shocks as well. So it creates a really uncertain macro economic and kind of global geopolitical landscape. That makes it very hard as an enterprise to figure out what I should do next and what will happen next. It's quite unpredictable. And I don't think the answer is to try and plan a big strategy and say, I'm just going to execute this plan. You're going to have to be super, super agile. And then on top of all of that, we have a technology shock. We have the rise of AI and Gen AI along with it, which is creating questions in the enterprise and competition from in the market about how and what you can do with this technology to change the way you serve your customers and your partners. So that's the context that these, what we might have called black swan events, you might have heard that term during the COVID days, but also even at a day-to-day level, we don't have everything under our control to be able to know that everything's going to work exactly as we'd like. So even on a day-to-day basis, maybe your supply chain is disrupted because a truck breaks, or your manufacturing line, your machine breaks. And these things are micro disruptions, but very, very damaging to an enterprise who's trying to operate efficiently and leanly in a very, very changeable world. So real time is the answer. We already thought about this, but interesting survey on the right hand side. So MIT's Research Institute had observed, as a study they did at the sometime in 2024, back in 24, they published this report where they had looked at 250 plus enterprises across different sectors and tried to understand what features of those enterprises make them successful. And a key feature was being real time. And fundamentally, those enterprises demonstrated incredible figures actually in terms of revenue growth and profitability. But behind that, better efficiency, resilience, innovation, and ultimately business agility. So it's all founded on being a real-time business, which means, as you can see in the middle of that diagram on the right-hand side, acting on real-time data. Now, the challenge with that, so this is like a golden goose, if you like, the goose that will lay the golden egg if you can be real-time in this context. But we have a challenge here because it's founded on data, and data is exploding everywhere. You know, we've seen it. You know, you guys know just as well, and I'm sure the audience as well know extremely well. The world of IoT generates truckloads of data. You know, I remember it even from my days. Everything is either connected or having intelligence and compute built into it. It's generating truckloads of data. That's why what we can see on the right-hand side now is this report. If you're familiar with the IDC, the analyst firm, they have this thing called the Global Data Sphere report, where they estimate how much data is humanity creating. And they've updated their forecast recently, and they're saying in 2025, we will be generating as humanity globally 213 zettabytes of data. It's going to be more than doubling by 2029. And I don't know if folks listening to this are familiar with the zettabytes. I kind of know technically, you know, it's 1 followed by 21 zeros. It really is still not an imaginable thing. It's just a huge, huge number. I can tell you how many grains of sand, how many times more than the grains of sand on the earth, etc. But it really is ultimately incomprehensible. But that's the challenge, that you've got this data, huge volume of data. But on the left-hand side is a quote that I use quite a lot, because I think Michael Dell saw it ages ago. This is from 2019. He could see, as well as many people could see, that not only is the data exploding, it's not all going to be in the cloud. So we've spent a long time, and in my career, I've spent a lot of time with enterprises, helping them to move compute and data into the cloud. Cloud is a hugely critical technology for enterprises. It's created a huge springboard to for many of the business operations we see today that can be delivered at scale and resilience globally. But 100 times is Michael Dell's view. 100 times more than the cloud is 100 times more than the public cloud is where that data will be generated. Now, even if Michael Dell is not quite right and he's been optimistic, and there's only 10 times more data generated outside the cloud than inside, it's still an enormous amount of data. And that means we can't just rely on cloud to get access to our real-time data. So if your data is everywhere, that's why we believe your AI has to be everywhere. For an enterprise to have visibility and awareness over its situation, its situational awareness, essentially, they're going to have to connect and observe and act on data wherever it is. So that's why we believe that AI has to be everywhere, because that's where your data is. And I had a really interesting conversation a while back with one of our partners who we were discussing edge and distributed computes, essentially. And he said, well, why distributed? And I said, well, listen, like, the world is distributed, enterprises are distributed. This is our nature. Whatever enterprise you are, virtually every single enterprise is distributed by nature in the physical world. And yet we have quite a cloud-centric way of operating our technology platforms. And there is a mismatch there that needs to be addressed. So that's what we're going to see. And that's what we're seeing is the challenge in just relying on cloud alone. So what we believe then is the answer to this is to complement your cloud. Now, I want to stress the word complement, because we'll talk about silos in a minute, but complement the cloud with edge and distributed compute. This is obviously the infrastructure of the distributed world that will allow us to put that AI right next to where the data is being generated and where the action needs to happen. And that's how you're going to get real-time ability to make decisions, intelligent decisions in real time. What we know with cloud, and we've seen it, is there is a number of constraints with it. You have a latency constraint. If you are having to transmit data from where the action is occurring all the way to the cloud and back again, let's say it's 200 milliseconds, maybe it's a little bit less than that, but a millisecond or 200 milliseconds is an age in machine at machine speed. It's just too slow for certain types of things that you need to monitor and be able to respond in real time. And we'll go into a couple of those examples in a minute. On top of that, you have the bandwidth requirement that costs. On top of that cost, you have the storage requirement. You generate some data out in your operational field, and that has to then be copied into the cloud. That's actually 2 copies of data. You're paying twice for storage. And at scale, that becomes a serious cost consideration. And let's not forget about compliance. There is, every year that I've been in the industry, we see more stringent data protection and privacy rules, not more relaxed things. So we've got to really take care about copying data all over the place. And of course, by now, after many, many years of digital transformation, every enterprise is highly aware of the the criticality of its data as its intellectual property, and it's differentiated to be able to provide the services it does to its customers and partners. So there's a cost, there's a compliance, and ultimately there's a latency problem. And that's why edge and distributed computing solves part of that problem. Now, the complementary part that I talk about is, and that's why I've got the double-headed arrow, is the two domains need to be converging. The enterprises really don't, in my experience, enterprises don't care about the technology so much, right? What they're after is answers to business problems. And usually the answer to a business problem is not one technology or the other, it's a combination. And that's actually what I've seen virtually my entire career. And so we need to address essentially this idea of IT and OT silos. IoT has been around for a long time. It's been in the world of engineering and manufacturing, and it's built up as its own technology stack. In parallel with that, we've had cloud emerge over the last 15 years, and it's emerged as its own stack. Now, there are attempts, and good attempts, to converge that, and the convergence is happening. But we've got to actively make sure we do that, because the answer to the enterprise really getting value from adding distributed and edge computing is by making sure that the cloud is part of the total view. So that's basically what we see is the answer. You need to be real time. The data is everywhere. You need to put your AI next to the data with edge and distributed compute. So this is not just a Linebreak opinion. I'm glad to say. I'm glad that we're seeing things that are now really going into the minds of major enterprises across the world, and at the C level. So certainly CIOs are, that's my example here, really, is just quoting that, you know, CIO forums across the world. This example is from a CIO in the US, is that edge computing has to be on the roadmap of the enterprise for 25 and beyond. So this is really gaining traction, and it's gaining traction across virtually every sector. So I have conversations where folks say to me, "Well, is edge and distributed compute for me? Does it apply to me?" Yes, it does. It applies virtually everywhere. The data, as I said, is inherently distributed. That's what the real world looks like. So whether you're in logistics and retail, healthcare, these are kind of like almost obvious areas of distribution. But I would challenge anyone to come to me with an example of an industry that wouldn't be accelerated and wouldn't have value added by being distributed in the way that it deals with its data. So there's a lot of investment going on. These are just some numbers from one of our analyst partners that we worked with. There's a lot of investment going on because the value is expected to be there for the enterprise to grab. And specifically, if I just highlight on a couple of, well, what are these use cases that can apply across these different sectors? Just 3 examples. I'm not going to go into them in detail. But manufacturing as a highlight, advanced predictive maintenance. I'm just talking about that one here because I want to go into this a little bit more detail going forward. But supply chain and logistics routing optimization, in retail, hyper-personalization, there's a whole gamut of use cases which will only be unlocked by having a distributed and edge complement to your overall IT landscape and your business transformation. So there you go. Maybe we could stop there, except that why isn't everybody doing it then? Why, if real time is such an edge and distributed with it is such a valuable thing for the enterprise to have, why aren't we just doing it? Well, I think I'm just going to highlight 2 sort of key areas with subsections here. One point is that it's about technology. There are a whole bunch of new technologies coming in. One we've seen already is the latest wave of AI and Gen AI, and everybody's talking about agentic, etc. But also the world of edge, it's a constrained world in terms of compute. It's increasing hugely. We can do a lot more in the edge now than we could a few years ago. But nevertheless, it isn't the same as cloud. And so you have slightly different technologies which will work in the edge. So there's AI that works in the edge. You can quantize your AI. You can have adaptive AI, which we'll talk about later. You need new types of architecture to deal with the high velocity and multiple sources of events. And this is about mastering technology. It's not that familiar to the enterprise, especially the latest innovations that we've been seeing. And then on the broader picture of it is about the distributed enterprise mindset. We've been highly conditioned or highly used to working with cloud and cloud-centric technologies. As I say, it's a fantastic technology enabler for enterprises. I'm not denigrating it at all, but it means we have a very centralized, if you like, architectural approach, and even kind of business thinking approach. So I think part of the challenge is to break out of a centralized mindset and think about what distributed really means. And what it really means is not just from a technology point of view, but a people and a process point of view. My career started in embedded technology, and I thought that was the key to unlocking business value. And then as I went through my career a couple of years later, I thought actually technology enables process. That's the key to enterprise value. What we're seeing with AI and Gen AI, and what I've been seeing for a long time before that, is that people fundamentally are what will be a key part of the answer for enterprises to realize the value. At the end of the day, it's about what it means to people and what people get from it. And this technology is going to change the way in which we work. It's going to give us new opportunities to work differently, but only if we as people understand what it means to us and how we want to operate in that world. And this is basically a change management piece, right? This is classic technology-enabled business transformation. It requires people to change as well. So we've got to think about the distributed mindset with people as well as process and technology. The other challenge with this having a distributed mindset is like, how do I actually start somewhere? It's great to have a big picture idea, which is what I'm trying to paint here, but where do I practically start? You know, this is quite an innovative area. I need to be agile. I'm going to be agile by being real time, but I also need to be agile and nimble in the way that I start on the journey to get into that destination. So that is again an area that needs some support to the enterprise. And then for me as well, I'm an enterprise architect ultimately by trade for years now. The business principles, the enterprise architecture principles of what's my return on investment, how do I measure that, has to be there, right? There has to be a business case which we can absolutely identify is a goal of anything that we embark on. And behind that, of course, as I mentioned security earlier, we've got to be able to address concerns about, what is my data secure in the edge? How am I protecting it from exploitation by malicious third parties? Is this a scalable and a maintainable and a sustainable business architecture and technology architecture? You know, will it be able to grow with me over time? These are some classic architecture principles which are still need to be addressed as part of what we do with the opportunities to be real time. So that's some of the blockers, which of course the reason for me raising these blockers is this is exactly an area that Linebreak and others as well, of course, but Linebreak works in, is to help enterprises to decode that complexity, figure out where they can start, figure out what the end-to-end solution looks like, and then start making stepwise journey into the transformation. So that's how we can actually move forward if we can address these blockers. What does it look like? So let's make it a bit more tangible. So that's the kind of theory and the sort of the philosophy part done. I would like to talk about advanced predictive maintenance. So I touched on that earlier when I talked about the manufacturing use cases. So just a couple of things about this. One is that predictive maintenance itself is really a specific example of a broader idea of condition-based monitoring and maintenance, right? So it's applicable in a number of different industries, but I want to talk about it as an example in manufacturing. And what we're talking about with advanced predictive maintenance in terms of an example of what we're doing is putting adaptive AI, which I'll talk about a little bit more again in a moment, which gives us a really an interesting way to have specific models for different machinery that we're monitoring across our facilities. Using Gen AI as well to create agents, essentially co-pilots, and using techniques like retrieval augmented generation to allow us to get the data in the moment on which we can make decisions. And then being able to, and ensuring that we connect both operational data and IT data so that the enterprise can make both tactical, operational, and strategic decisions depending on what's happening in that moment. So that's the kind of idea behind it, but why is it a problem? So in the world of manufacturing, there's a very interesting report by Siemens called The Cost of Unplanned Downtime. Really interesting figures. I mean, some of them are mind-blowing, actually. So there are cost pressures in the manufacturing industry, hourly expenses increasing by 50%. So you got cost base is rising. Your 1 hour of unplanned downtime is a huge disruption, and the upstream downstream combined impact for an automobile manufacturer is estimated to be in the region of $2 million per hour, which is like mind-blowing. Even more mind-blowing, I keep getting mind-blown by this report that I saw. That is a combined loss across Fortune 500 manufacturers globally of 1.5 trillion. 10% of the turnover, but it's the trillion that, again, is like, this is not sustainable, right? There must be a better way, and there is a better way. What I think is interesting is that a lot of manufacturing is still using reactive maintenance. So there's a lot of opportunity for manufacturers to be able to really up their game here. So that reactive maintenance piece, of course, means, what are you doing? You're waiting for something to go wrong, and then we all run around doing our level best to fix the problem. So headless chicken type moments happen, high stress environment. And so if you can fix some of those things, the right hand side are some of the obvious benefits that come out of that. Ultimately, it's an efficiency play, but it's more than that. It's about enabling you as a manufacturer to deliver the promises to your customer every single time. Because in a competitive world, you only need to let down a key customer once, and you may never get the opportunity to be able to fix that problem. So you can't rest on your laurels. We have a competitive world, and we need to move forward to address that. So that's the why I think predictive maintenance in manufacturing. Just let's do a double click. Okay, so manufacturing, it's a complex enterprise. I'm not an expert in manufacturing. I am an expert in understanding business, but with a background in technology, and then put two things together to try and find solutions. So I'm not an expert, but of course you'll know that manufacturing has a complex value chain. But we're double clicking into the example here of the line itself. So on the right hand side, you have an assembly line, you have a complex machine there, maybe it's a robot, but it's a key piece of machinery. It's pressing out body panels, whatever it might be. If it goes wrong, everything stops. I've got a friend who works actually in manufacturing, and he says in car manufacturing in particular, who works literally on the assembly line floor, and says they have outages quite regularly, and it absolutely stops the whole place, and everybody is in a high stress situation to get the line moving again. So that's the scenario, and our view is, how does that scenario play out if you get the right combination of AI, IoT, Gen AI with IT and OT convergence? What does it mean? So we start at the top left, so we'll follow the arrows, and I'll just be very quick on this point here. these points. So in your facility, you have a machine, it's generating data through sensors that are connected to the machine. That sensor data then in the second step is being assessed by some intelligence, or could be discrete logic. But I think these days with complex data patterns that we're trying to decode, AI is a way to be able to make sense of that. So AI will be let's say AI therefore detects a failure event, or it predicts that something could be failing in the near future. That event then needs to be acted on. So the next step is the root cause analysis, which is understanding correlation versus causation. So in a typical plant or facility, there'll be many sensors, and there'll be many events generated, and each sensor might think there's a problem on its side. Actually, if you get like 5 machines all reporting that they're failing within a particular space of time, maybe there's another source to that problem. Perhaps you've got a power supply problem. Perhaps you've got some other glitches occurring across your system. So we need to be intelligent about what we act on. So that's the root cause analysis. Is it correlation versus causation? And here is where the agentic AI in particular can lean on a body of knowledge. That body of knowledge could be the operating procedures for that plant, for that machine, to understand that if this machine is going wrong with these signals, what does that look like in terms of resolution, or who I should tell, what's the policy around this, prior knowledge in terms of what did we do before when this kind of thing happened. This is the intelligence that's being added to the automation of predictive maintenance that can be done by the agent. That then allows the agent to come up with what is my best next action. So there's a range of things I can do based on history of what we've done before, based on the operating policies of that machine, of that plant, etc. And that allows the agent to talk to other agents. This will be potentially cross-function collaboration. So I need to call the maintenance. I need to get maintenance scheduled. When is the maintenance crew available to come to help me resolve this issue? Maybe I need spare parts. When's the delivery of that going to be available? So the agent can not only determine the best next action, but it can also start putting that action into action. Now, the critical thing here for me is when I said people, process, technology earlier, the human has to be in the loop. What we know with AI, whether it's the latest and greatest large language model, specialized language model, they will need humans to ensure that they're not hallucinating, humans to ensure that this specific course of action is the right thing to do. And at the end of the day, we as people, and the operator in this case, is still going to be responsible for what happens in that plant. So the agent will be informing the operator. Hey, Paul, I've just noticed this machine's going bad. I think what you need to do is turn down that machine to 50% duty cycle, or turn it off altogether to protect it. I've called the maintenance. They'll be here next Thursday, and it'll probably take them a day to fix it. The operator receives this information and can accept it. In this case, it might be that, Paul, you say, hey, I'm going to turn that machine off for sure, but really Thursday is not good enough. This is a critical order. I'm in a very busy period. It's going to cause massive downstream disruption. I need the maintenance here sooner than that. Please escalate. Agent can take that information on board, and really it's offloading a lot of cognitive burden, because what we know in the world of manufacturing is the stress levels are getting higher and higher. The amount of information at the speed at which we're asking the operator to respond is only getting faster. So this is truly becoming your co-pilot to help you relieve some cognitive burden, so you can focus on what's really going on. What do I really need to do next? And so that agent's taking on board some of that ability for you to address some of that. but it's also connecting. And I've got cloud icons here as well as factory icons, because this is a combination of information and exchanges between your OT systems and your IT systems, not just systems, your processes and your people. So this is the whole enterprise collaborating at the right time to be able to act together. So for example, here, the center, so your ERP, your CRM, your MES, etc., whatever systems you have to run your whole business, which are typically cloud-based, is aware of the events, doesn't have to have all the data. As I said earlier, you don't copy all that data to the cloud. It takes too long, storage, etc. So this is about sharing events and things that are happening, which allows the central system, maybe it's got its own co-pilots and agentic AIs. And of course, it'll have its own operators who can then determine whether is this a tactical, operational, or strategic impact. Tactical impact, okay, we've had a spontaneous failure, we have to just get the part in and it's a one-off. Maybe there's a broader pattern to that. Actually, operationally, this machine keeps failing. We may need to completely overhaul this machine or replace it. And so you need to think about that. Or maybe there's a strategic impact, which is this entire site is a problem site. It's constantly failing. We may need to think about, in this step here, strategic decisions, which allows us to balance supply versus demand and investment. What I mean by that is that we are able to decide, based on all this event data and shared insight between IT and OT, people and process, whether maybe we need a whole new factory, or maybe we need to refurb this factory and it's going to go offline for a year. Or we have a big order coming through and we know that we have limited capacity in some of our factories and facilities. Our big order for our key customer, we're going to make sure we divert it to places where we have the capacity, or we set expectations. And then the last box which just appeared there, I meant to click it to come up. What's the purpose of all this? The purpose is to always keep our promises. I mentioned earlier, like we want to set and make sure we don't break our promises to our customers. We only get one chance to make a good impression in a very, very competitive world. But we want to be able to do that in a way where we're efficient. We can make promises and then keep them at any cost, but that isn't sustainable as a business. So the whole point of this storyboard, which is now possible, is to be able to make promises that are sustainable and economically viable. The technological feasibility is here now for us to be able to do that. It's a case of trying to put it into action in the right ways by helping our enterprises understand the business value of all this. So that's the storyboard. What does it look like? And this is just an example of what we're building and technologies that we're working with. So on the factory floor, as I said, there you've got sensors, microphones, etc. They're attached to machines. Bonsai is an example of adaptive AI. So a quick double click on adaptive AI. Adaptive AI recognizes that you can't have a single machine learning model that represents all of your machines, even of the same model, of the same type. The reason is that the real world, going back, is analog. The real world is not digital. And so even machining tolerances and the life history of that particular machine means that it sounds different in normal operation to the same type of machine that had a different history. And so you have to have different models to detect whether there's a problem with this machine or not. So the analogy I use is the age of steam, where the steam engineer really understood their steam engine and how what were the right sounds and what was normal or not. So Bonsai allows us to learn in the edge without having to have big cloud-based ML ops cycles, which requires data collection, transmission to the cloud, training, creating a new model, deploying it back into the edge. This will learn instantly in the edge by the operator saying that noise, that's weird. And it will remember that for the very next inference. But that is just a single event saying, I think there's a machine going wrong. You have multiple machines and you have other sensors, you have video, you have power supply sensors, etc. So these events all come into a event bus. So as I said, we need to have an event-driven architecture. It goes into an event bus That event bus allows us to correlate in real time with some real-time database technologies that we providers we work with, such as Vault, to determine whether or not there's a correlation or causation. So we have more AI here, and that insight is then automated through, at the moment we're using as an example LangChain, which is a common RAG and a framework for agents to use, and that's what interacts with the operator to say, this has happened, I'm going to do this and this, and I think you need to do that, and I've also informed the center. And all of this can run either on the edge, because we're using containers and Kubernetes to orchestrate all of this. You can run in on the edge in your factory. It could run in a distributed cloud or your own private or public cloud, whatever you use. So that's a kind of let's hope is a bit of a quick double click on the kinds of technologies that we're using that is enhancing essentially the IoT and the edge capability to bring now intelligent decisioning to those enterprises. So I've gone on a little bit. I've gone kind of fast, but also maybe I've gone a kind of high level too. But I just want to kind of replay really what we believe. So why should you be a real-time enterprise? So that's really the where we start, and it's because the world's moving fast. You've got to keep up with the pace of change, and it's both micro and macro levels of unpredictability that we're seeing. So what do I need to do about it? Your data is everywhere. You're going to have to put your AI next to where the data and the action is happening. Otherwise, you can't get the real-time insight on what you need to do. How will you do that? With edge and distributed computing, but not on its own. We have to really think about the end-to-end and ensure that convergence is happening to extract the maximum amount of value from the data and the insights that we can generate. And the so what if I do this, what will I get? And that's absolutely the critical thing for business leaders. What you get is real-time situational awareness across your whole business. You can act on it across your whole business, in the edge, in the center. That allows you to react immediately and predict better than you would have been able to before, in terms of what's going to happen in the near-term future, as well as strategically in the long-term future. And you're going to be able to do it in a way which drives efficiency, growth, improves your customer and your employee experience, and fundamentally makes you an agile business. And that's basically fundamentally what we believe is what it means to be a real-time business. So that's a whistle-stop tour of really our opinion and what we're seeing. I'm having lots of conversations with both technology vendors, global technology partners, but also, of course, the enterprise itself. And this is something now I think is ready for us to really take forward to our business leaders to get the attention that I think this deserves and get them on the path to real-time intelligent decisioning. I'll stop there because I don't want to run out of time if there are questions or just other queries about what this all means.
Just coming off mute there. John, you're on mute.
Okay, yes, great dive. Good to hear someone who's really doing AI at the edge and practical things that you can do with it. I had one question is, how often do businesses understand what it is in their data that indicates they've got an impending failure? Like, I mean, if it's an aircraft engine, it might rattle in a certain way, or, you know, if it's a pump and the throughput's greater than normal, well, then it's already failed. How much do they understand what is indicative of a failure, and how much would they need to research to use this kind of technique before it would become possible?
Yeah, great point, actually. So I'm not sure that many enterprises do know at a corporate level, at a corporate body of knowledge level. What we do see is that the people who are the operators in the field are real experts. They can tell. It's not codified in a manual or in some kind of rule book. They just know, like I said, the steam, like in the age of steam, they can tell that this pump is not sounding right. If I use sound as an example. And so that's why I think adaptive AI, which is the ability to deploy a model kind of with no intelligence at all or no context, but then train the model in the edge for that specific machine so that it understands this machine almost as well as the operator will, is one way of actually extracting what you could call latent knowledge, latent intelligence, which is within the human operator, and able to share it now with a machine to help automate making some of those decisions. So I think that it is there. It will require some enterprises will require some research because it really needs to look at the data. Others can just start attaching sensors and signal processing to their current assets and ask humans what looks right and not, and use adaptive AI to encode that intelligence into machine learning.
With the industries that you talked about, in regards to industrial with manufacturing as an example, and in supply chain as well, commonly the workforces that are involved there are sometimes have limited access to technology, and I mean that's advanced over the past 10 years for sure, but there is still that sort of friction and culture. How do you work with the businesses to help drive not just the technology landscape and changes, but the culture change with them as well, to then try and remove any friction for adoption?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, that's core, right, Paul? As I was kind of sort of mentioned it a couple of times, we have to understand the user need, the user perspective of this. What will they get from it? I think a couple of quick things. One is just generally on AI, right? There's this kind of like conversations I'm having are really about part of what we embark on as a transformation, especially with AI and agentic AI. There's a lot of hype and there's a lot of scare as well out there. We have to understand as a business undergoing change, what do we want from our workforce? Are we trying to replace the human? Are we trying to augment the human or enhance the human? I think enhance is a bit further away, but I think replace is where there's a lot of negativity or worry, and I don't think that's the case, right? I think it's much more about augment. So we have to get into the minds of what people really want. For us, there's a lot of design thinking. So these are not new techniques, but I just think techniques that become more and more important in getting these kind of projects and transformations right, is to really take a design thinking angle on this. And design thinking is a discipline, right? It's a discipline which is really putting the customer or the user at the heart of what we're trying to achieve, and then using that as the basis for our solutioning activities rather than just throwing technology at them. I worked in a few different industries. This is nothing to do with edge and IoT in particular, as you know, right? I've seen, we've all heard of multiple projects where the IT has failed spectacularly because the users weren't properly consulted, the change management wasn't properly thought about. You might need to get a small set of users first so you can do your sort of early adopter phase and learn something from them before you scale. But you got to. These are fairly well understood ways of going about change, and they don't go away. The fundamentals, as I said, the fundamentals of enterprise architecture and change management are still here. But yeah, I do think that we can get carried away by the technology because it's really exciting actually in terms of what you can do with it, and forget that at the end of it all, there is a business leader, there is an operator, there is a customer, there is a support person, maintenance person that is going to have to work along with these technologies.
Very much so. And with the understanding from conversations we've had, and as well you've very well articulated here on the show, and thank you very much for doing that. How do you find the partners to work with the technology landscape that you're looking to solve the problems with? Do you find the problem, then find the partners, or do you curate those partners to sort of have that advanced move forward?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of both, because I mean, I've been looking at technology trends and sort of global technology impacts for years as part of my job, and there's two things I would say. One is there's a lot of innovation happens from the ground up, right? There's a piece of technology breakthrough and there's something really clever you can do with it. But the top down part is like, what's the business problem that we can address with that? So I've come a lot from the top down. I've worked with, but I rely on innovative technology partners to say, well, this is a new technology that's available for us. And then we figure out together how we can make that work for a particular problem domain and have a conversation with non-technology folks about what that means to them. So that's one thing. There's both top down and bottom up to identify areas where we can help. And also then there is the combination of technologies. What I showed just a moment ago with a few different areas of tech, each one is useful, quite useful, but actually combining it together in an end-to-end solution gives the enterprise a view of the total solution that they could get. It doesn't mean you have to have all of it on day one. This is about doing an agile thing and incrementally building up. But being able to position the technology in the right place across an end-to-end solution to a business problem, I think helps a lot, which is part of what I do. And so then the curation part is essentially for me mainly a top-down part where I see, for example, adaptive AI. I really think that's an interesting technology, needing event-driven architectures. As you go down the technology stack, you get to physical compute. What kind of servers will we need? We need servers that are robust and that are designed for edge and operating in facilities. So that's how I curate. Really, I kind of try and decompose it from the top down. But I'm always open to listening to new tech providers in terms of what they're seeing.
Yeah. One of the things that I've recognized with working with companies similar to yours, I think the thing that I love about your company is actually its feet on the street to go and integrate, which I think there's a huge gap in the industry of. But I have recognized with other companies where they've gone down the journey similar to yours, then they've found a problem statement and started to build rather than partner, and to try and solve the problem that way, and then get distracted and start to move to being a product-led business rather than the services type business like yourselves. How do you fight that temptation? As I'm sure it comes across with being very innovative, clever guys, right?
Well, that's really interesting, because I've definitely had a couple of conversations in this mold, which is like there's so many clever people out there in the world, and I cannot build everything myself. And some folks are just I want to reuse things, right? So it's another enterprise architecture principle. Like, what have I got that I can reuse? If I can't reuse it, can I buy it from somewhere or get it in from somewhere, open source or whatever? And finally, I'll build. Right now, sometimes the engineering mindset is like, I can build this. I really think that for the enterprise, it makes sense the other way around. And actually, it's very important that we're not trying to build and kind of reinvent wheels when we've got good wheels that we can already use. So that's part of like how I stop myself from just saying, let's just build it all. And the other part is it's about acceleration. I could build a better wheel than the wheels I see already, but if those wheels are good enough, maybe we should start, because I think part of the challenge with a lot of technology-led transformation is we're waiting and waiting and waiting for the technology to be perfect. And maybe we should just but thoughtfully get on the first rung of the ladder and see where that can take us. See if we can get some value from it that will fuel our confidence and our understanding to do some more expansive. And the other thing, just quick point on your point about product versus service. Today, in the world of edge, AI, and real time, there are no single platforms. This is not a world of ERP that's been around for 25 years and we know how to do HR or finance. This is a very, very use case driven solutions. And so that's why the integration part is certainly key, and some bespoke, right? So we'll have gluing things together as well as creating some bespoke components and ultimately integrating that for essentially tailored solutions for the moment. We'll get common use cases where we can go, there's a turnkey platform at some point, but right now, with the amount of technology churn and advancement we're seeing, I think we're not ready with platform-based solutions. So I really think that it's a service integration piece that enterprises need today.
Do you think if we get to that platform point, that's when we'll truly start to see the scale, when things start to get democratized, that it becomes easier to adopt, that it starts. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's a loaded question in a good way, because I think we've touched on this in the past, right? Where so edge, cloud, and distributed potentially is a very complex topology. I mean, I didn't touch on that actually earlier. It's like, it's got a lot of value, but it's quite complex. It's quite, how do you manage your workload or your business process across these different infrastructures? And so, we talk, for example, Paul, about edge management and orchestration. And can we, is there a layer here that helps us to abstract away some of the underlying kind of topological and network kind of complexity? So I do think that platform plays are emerging in different layers of the architecture stack. I think in the logic layer, less so, because the logic is going to be very, very enterprise dependent, and that stuff hasn't been figured out, like, for example, HR or something, but on the orchestrating across cloud, on-premise, distributed premises, and edge and IoT, I think there is going to be a maturation in that area, because really you can't do it at scale without that piece coming in.
Very much so.
Great. And we've got 3 minutes left. Hopefully this is a quick question. For our audience, Dolo, have you got any tips on how to avoid the proof of concept graveyard? The proof of concepts that don't make it to scale, don't make it in production, sort of get killed off early.
There's two things, isn't there? There's one is, what's the, like, having a clear purpose. It's like, what is the, like, I would have a clear purpose where you've got to admit something. Firstly, if you don't have a clear purpose that doesn't result in that purpose being executed by real users on real world data in a real world scenario, then you have to admit that you're in a experiment and R&D mode. Because if you mix the two things together, I think it really upsets business leaders and the people with the purse holders who go, what am I doing? I'm just in this, like you say, in this POC graveyard. And so and part of what we do in that is having this really design thinking led approach. Like, what does the user want to see? Can we get something to the user that they can kick the tires and they can trial, and having I suppose almost an obsession to get something into the hands of the end users, not to other experimenters, is possibly a way. That'd be one tip, or a key tip, really. Like MVP, right? In the world of Agile, we have POC versus MVP. I would always be insisting on, what does the MVP look like? And just as a quick thing, because I would go over time, MVP comes with business measures, right? Whereas POC come with some technical understanding. I'm learning something about whether the tech does work or doesn't work. Whereas MVP comes with business measures. What does the efficiency look like now? What is my response look like now compared to before? So I would really if you can't create business measures, then you're probably in a POC world. And will you get the budgets and the commitment from leadership to scale it? Maybe not, because you're trying to show business impact, not technical impact at the end of the day.
Great. That's a useful distinction to make. I think that brings us to time. It just remains for me to say, we're always looking for speakers on any IoT subject. If you've got an idea for a talk you'd like to give, please get in contact with either myself or Paul. Would love to hear from you, and we'll see you in October, in a month's time.
Do we have somebody lined up for October, John?
We do not, which is why I'm
okay.
I have some ideas, but they haven't got back to me yet. So
okay, cool. I've got a couple of people that's been in touch actually. So I'll reach out to those and stuff as well. Should have done that offline rather than in front of everybody on how disorganized we are sometimes with shows. Dolo, thank you so much. Always a pleasure. Look forward to catching up with you with the National AGI Hub. I'm going to do a punt. I wrote a book. It's now released. It's called The Human Loop. It covers an awful lot of the things that we just chatted about here, and Dolo very well articulated. But it's It's available on Amazon. Just go in dead easy, search Paul Wheels, Wealls, and you will find the book. Or catch up with me on LinkedIn. You never know, I might give you a free copy. And on that, I will say thank you very much, gentlemen, and good night.
Take care. See you soon.